Our Parsha for today is Beshalach. It is in Exodus, the 17th chapter. We will go through, as a matter of fact, who would like to volunteer to read for me to sort of narrate the beginning of this story here. So who would like to read from verse 1, and I'll stop you when I need to have you stop. Who would like to be the volunteer? Okay, I won't volunteer anybody. It's a sad day. Okay, here we go.
Okay, you guilted me into it.
Yay! Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me get my glasses so I can actually see what I'm reading. Verse 17, right?
Mm-hmm. Chapter 17, chapter 17, verse 1. We're starting into the Parsha.
Okay. 13. Okay, well, I guess I'm in the wrong spot.
Beshalach. Beshalach, chapter 17, verse 1.
And it was when Pharaoh went out?
It says the entire community of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin by stages.
Oh, you're not starting at the beginning of the portion.
No, I'm starting at chapter 17.
Aren't you glad I volunteered?
I am so glad, because any other person would have told me to go take a hike.
Okay, hold on. It's hard to find chapters in this interlinear.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And they journeyed the entire assembly of the children of Israel. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
From the wilderness of Sin on their journeys, according to the command of Hashem, they encamped in Rephidim, and there was no water to drink for the people. The people quarreled with Moshe, and they said, "Give us water that we may drink." Say to them, did Moshe, "For what reason do you quarrel with me? To what end do you test Hashem?" They thirsted there, the people did, for water, and complained did the people against Moshe, and they said, Why is this that you brought us up from Egypt to kill me and my children and my livestock through thirst? Moshe cried out to Hashem, saying, "What shall I do for this people? A little more, and they will stone me." Hashem said to Moshe, "Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel and your staff that you struck with it the river. Take in your hand and go. Indeed, I shall stand before you there near the rock in Horeb. You shall strike into the rock, and there shall come forth from it water, and drink will the people." He did so, Moses did, before the eyes of the elders of Israel.
Okay, good. Let's pause right there. So I said earlier or last night that we were going to talk about this segment because it is speaking of Israel's first battle, the very first battle, and it's with Amalek. Amalek is a sordid kind of slimy fellow that is a descendant of Esau. He and his band of merrymen, his people, his tribe, they're a Bedouin tribe, basically. So if you go to Israel, you'll see these Bedouin tribes. It's like that. And most Bedouin tribes at that time, somewhat even like Abraham, they had standing military that could do battle. And I said earlier that we were going to talk about how in our postmodern era, well, every human era, every generation has this battle that takes place between the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov. There is this battle to follow Hashem or the battle to not follow Hashem. We've heard many times that we only have free choice to do one thing, or free will, whatever you prefer to call it. I like free choice. But we only have the ability to choose one thing. And technically, we don't even have free choice if that's the case. Let me explain. It says the only free choice we have is to do the will of Hashem or not. That's it. That's your free choice. So within the bounds of what free choice is in all of our lives, it has to know that you're choosing the right thing is to choose what is pleasant and proper for your journey with Hashem. It's your trust in Hashem. It's the wisdom that you learn from Hashem and His Torah. These are part of the sort of spiritual maturation that takes place and spiritual maturity. And we all are going to experience this, but I think that this lesson sort of lays out a prescription, not only for the Jewish people and their history, but also for those of us who are on a spiritual journey. We all recognize that there is a battle of forces within our lives, and that those battles, based on your observance to follow Hashem's Torah or not, or to walk in doubt and fear and anguish, or walk in faith and wisdom and confidence, is two very distinct places. And the latter has, the former, which would be the state of rejection of the commandments of God in my life, would mean that there is going to be a consequence that God will to possibly intervene and cause you to really buckle down and have to fight for what you have. Let's explain. In verse 17, chapter 17, verse 7 and 8, it says, they called the name of the place Massa, or testing, the place Massa Merivah. Testing and quarreling is basically what it means. So testing and quarreling. So if we're going to take notes, say the first place that is going to be challenged, and the first sign that you're getting ready to be embattled by sort of this I don't like to call it the spirit of Amalek, but you understand what I'm talking about, the negativity of an Amalek, spiritual Amalek in our life, starts with this idea that we start experiencing tests and we are quarreling with ourselves, or our Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov is in conflict with each other. And we all know the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov is meant and shaped by the Master of the universe in us, and it's for a purpose. It's to help refine us. It is not here to destroy us. It's here to challenge us. It actually gives us the fullest opportunity to practice our free choice. And the sages explained that Amalek's attack against the Jewish people was a punishment for their quarreling with Moshe and having tested Hashem. Notice the testing here was not the testing of the people, but testing Hashem. Now, I'm not really sure how that all falls out. What does it mean to test Hashem? But in the simplest thing, the testing is the questioning. There's a wonderful story in the Midrash. It tells of a son who is being carried on his father's shoulders, and whose father, time after time, protects him from various dangers and fulfills the child's request. He's carrying him on the shoulders and make sure that limbs, if you've ever carried a child on your shoulder, you don't want limbs to hit them in the face, and you're guarding them, et cetera, et cetera. And you're literally carrying them on the shoulder. And hearing, he says, finally the child asked a passerby. He's on the shoulders of his Abba as he's passing. And he asked the passerby, "Where's my father? Have you seen my father?" Hearing this, the father said to his son, "You don't know where I'm at?" He says, and he cast the child down from upon his shoulders, and the dogs came and bit him. Interesting midrashic story. Thus, too, Hashem miraculously took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim, split the sea, gave them water, fed them with manna, etc. And they nevertheless questioned this by saying, "Is Hashem in our midst or not?" Thus Hashem put them before the Amalekites, who were compared to brazen dogs because of their arrogant attack against the chosen people. Hashem did not choose to punish the Jews by withholding bread or water, for then they would have said, that Hashem was incapable of setting the table in the wilderness and providing for their needs. Hashem therefore provided them with all the things that cannot be found in the wilderness, such as bread, water, and meat, and all the physical needs. The one thing that is not found in the desert, however, was the very thing that came to punish them. From under natural circumstances, the nation would be foolish as to come down a barren wasteland to do battle against a nation of barefoot and hungry refugees. Knowing this, the Jews felt secure against the enemy attack, said that they were pretty confident. They're kind of joked about the whole thing, like who would even come down and bother us? Our problem is water and food. Our problem is Hashem really here with us? And you remember their chief complaint? Did you bring us out here to die? How long has it been since they left Egypt? What would you say? Anybody have a guess? Anybody have a guess?
14 days.
Roughly 14 days, almost 2 months, right? I mean, almost a month. 14 days, and they're already complaining. This is a premise that I've had and I've taught for several years in the world of Torah. If you believe or if you think that miracles build your emunah or faith, it has nothing to do with that. Your faith brings miracles, but miracles don't sustain your faith. This is a prime example. Signs and miracles took place. Israel walked across dry land, for crying out loud, with the sea up each side, and seeing all of the Egyptian army floating, their corpse bloating on the side of the beach. And yet, after that, and after the miracle of the water being sweetened at Mamre, they go out, and now they're complaining, is God even with us? What short memory do they have? As explained in the book of Samuel, the attack of Amalek contained none of the conditions that normally motivated one nation to wage war. I had a discussion with Rabbi Michelson and Rabbi Kasuto Dror this week, and we talked about why do they hate us? Why do they, come against the Jews? Why do those people who shouldn't hate us hate us? Well, here's the thing. There will always be in the world those who have the neshamas or the souls or whatever you call it, the reincarnation of these people that are descendants of Esau. Now, at some point in the future, according to the Nevi'im, the prophets, Esau will do tshuva at the end. They will do tshuva, and they will recognize Israel and the Torah and their one God. But at this point, the Amalekites had no regard for the God of Israel. They were pagans. They were into all kinds of deviant behavior. And I find it interesting that, and I'm sure they probably had spies in the camp somewhere, but you would think on the report of hearing that Israel was traversing through the desert and coming up to this territory where they were at, in hearing Israel kvetch and complain, is God in our midst? We're all going to be out here to starve. Moshe, you brought us out here to die. You would think they would say, well, good. They don't even believe in their own God, and just walk off and let it be done. No, it says that they saw what they were doing, and it's like Hashem sort of pulled them into the whole circumstance by saying, you know what? They don't even believe it. They need to be destroyed. And what do we have today in the modern world with the Palestinians and Israel? You have the Palestinians. Hamas has on their charter that they have replaced Israel, and that Israel is not living up to its Torah, and therefore God has done away with them and their Temple Mount, et cetera, et cetera. And they are using that as a premise to attack and to blow up synagogues and to stab Jews on the streets of Jerusalem. Very much the same as it is now. And it said that there are 5 basic reasons why war is raged. One would be obviously to expand borders. We don't see that as much as we have today. We're seeing it in Russia right now and Ukraine. They perceive a threat, possible threat from another nation, and they would somehow try to intervene. However, was when you left Mitzrayim, nowhere near the Amalekite border. They were nowhere near the Amalekites. The Amalekites came out to fight them. Next, perceive a threat from a nation that has provoked them with words of acts of belligerence. That's another reason why nations go to war. The First World War was started over the assassination of Ferdinand. And it was what do you call it? The flames of war was fanned from that assassination. And if you go back and look at the genesis of the First World War, you realize it was started over the stupidest reasons. Hundreds of thousands of young men lost their life over that stupid war. Next, want to demonstrate their strength and prowess. This is what Russia's doing right now in Ukraine. They just wanted to prove something. Next, believe that they have a religious duty or so that God would reward them for wiping out a nation of unbelievers. Amalek, however, did not fear God. He had no regard for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If anything, he had disdain, that disdain that was bred in him through his father's father, Esau. Rather, the true reason, according to the Malbim, that all the nations of the world, the first was the attack was motivated by their heretical denial of God. That's number one. All the nations of the world heard and knew about the miracles of Egypt and the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, and they all believed in Hashem's power. But the people of Amalek, on the other hand, heard heartily and absolutely rejected the idea and denied that God even existed. Therefore, they wanted to prove to the world that Hashem was powerless to save the Jews from their attack, and all the miracles of Mitzrayim were of nothing. Second, Amalek attack was motivated by deep-seated ancestral hatred toward the Jewish people. In reality, they were cousins. They were cousins, for crying out loud. Same as today. Now, the term Rephidim is found. Let's find what verse it's in. Verse 8, correct? Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. It's an interesting term. To state that Amalek attacked in Rephidim seems redundant because the verse had already named Rephidim, and that the sages therefore derived a deeper lesson from the phrase. So long as the Jewish people remained total and steadfast in their trust for Hashem, even the Amalekites experienced a feeling of fear and respect toward God. The reason why the Amalekites refused to be in fear of the God of Israel, because out of their own mouth were words that demonstrated that they had no serious fear of Hashem. That's what they perceived anyway. In Rephidim, however, a place whose very name connotes weakness and a loosening grip of allegiance toward Hashem and toward the commandments, the Jews complained against Hashem and against Hashem's faithful servant, Moshe. This, in turn, caused fear of God to weaken among the nations as well. We all know that the nations sort of pick up their cue from Israel itself. Now, I'm going to say something I don't want it to be misconstrued. It is a personal opinion of mine, and I believe it can be sourced in the text of the sages. But if Israel would do tshuva, true tshuva, all of Israel, then the naysayers and attackers and the terrorism would cease to exist. Because this story teaches us and shows us that Amalek came out of its way to attack Israel for no other reason than the fact that they saw that Israel was in a place of disbelief before God, and like that even cemented it harder. There's no way their God could truly be as powerful as they say he is if they don't believe he's going to take care of them. And when we see the Jewish people return and do tshuva, then we're going to see the nations bow before Hashem. But it's only going to happen when the pious people of the nations, along with the Jews, turn their hearts wholly to Hashem. And may it happen in our day. Because Amalek was chief of the nations, meaning the foremost in denying Hashem, this moral erosion affected them to the point where they came out to the desert to fight the Jews, who were in a state of Rephidim. They were in a state of weakened allegiance toward the Torah. So how do we begin to, or what do we need to recognize if in our life, if we find ourselves in embattlement against sort of the spirit of Amalek in our life, and we feel like that we're being attacked or punished in some way for no reason by an individual or a group or whomever, we should first look at our own personal Rephidim. Are we in a weakened allegiance to the Torah? Are we in a weakened state in our trust, our bitachon? Are we in a weakened state in our emunah, our faith in Hashem? It's a very important question to ask, because this was the reason why Amalek went out of its way to attack. We all scratch our heads, for example, when, do you remember, what is it, a couple of years ago that they had the synagogue attack in Pennsylvania? You remember that? I think Pittsburgh. We're all scratching our heads like, who does that? Like, what's the motivation of this guy? Like, why? How can somebody create such an illusion of disgust for someone that they would go in and attempt to murder everybody in the place? This is the same problem that's existed before time. When Israel is up, when the Jewish people are up doing what they should be doing, when the pious of the nations are up doing what they should be doing, then we'll see the diminishment of the unbeliever. And it's not because we've diminished them, but Hashem has diminished them. Now, let's look at a couple of ideas that come from verses 9, 11 through 13. Who would like to read for me that? 17th chapter, verse 9 through 13.
Okay, Moses said to Joshua, choose people for us and go do battle with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. Joshua did as Moses said to him, to do battle with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur ascended to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moses raised his hand, Israel was stronger. And when he lowered his hand, Amalek was stronger. Moses' hands grew heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on his side, on this side, and one on that side. And he remained with his hands in faithful prayer until sunset. Joshua weakened Amalek and its people with the sword's blade.
Awesome. So
Awesome.
The first, awesome. Good thing. Next time I expect you to read it in Elizabethan English so that it sounds more biblical. Okay. So it could sound like a Charleston Heston or something like that in the movie. Anyway.
I was thinking about that at the time.
Yehoshua fights, Moshe prays. So the second part of the formula to get out of this seemingly punished situation or this low place is the first part is recognizing that you're in Rephidim, that you are in a doubtful place with the way you're dealing with your relationship with Hashem. The second thing is know that it's twofold. The solution is going to be twofold. Number one, it's got to be approached spiritually. And number two is you have to make sure that you approach it also in a physical manner. Notice Moshe stands up with Aaron and her, and with hands upraised and in a spiritual meditation and prayer, they won the battle. But it was a two-pronged attack. Moshe had to pray, and Joshua had to assemble righteous men to go into battle with him. Now, there could be a little debate. Was it righteous men he needed to get or super soldiers? I'm convinced it was a combination of both. So we're going to take a two-pronged attack against this, both in prayer and in action. Your actions will be doing the mitzvahs to clear out the doubt and the lack of faith, to root out the lack of impatience that we have when it comes to dealing with Torah and with Hashem, and we got to root it out. It's both a physical thing, and of course we know studying Torah and doing mitzvahs is the elixir, the cure for that in the physical realm. Now, in the wars against Sihon, king of the Amorites, and against Og, king of Bashan, Moshe Rabbeinu does not send Joshua to fight, but rather Moshe himself engages in the battle. And the reason for this is that those battles were fought by Hashem. Now, there are some battles that are done, are done in a position of prayer and done in a position of a spiritual side. Thank God, most of our battles are not physical and challenging. I think most of our battles, especially once you start getting a hang of it, most of the battles is having to deal from it with a spiritual perspective. It said that Moshe engaged the battle himself. The reason for this is that those battles were fought by Hashem through open miracles. Hashem tells this to Moshe by saying, "Do not fear Og, because I have placed him in your hand," meaning that Moshe will defeat Og through open miracles. And as the verse continues, you will do to him what you did to Sihon, implying that Sihon was vanquished through open miracles. So the obvious thing is remembering that open miracles, there are miracles that can help bring you out of the state of Rephidim in your own personal life. There are two wars fought here: the natural war of the military tactics performed by Joshua, and the spiritual war fought against Esau's guardian angel, the one who stands on high and accuses the Jewish people in the heavenly tribunal. The spiritual war was waged by Moshe when Joshua fought the physical battle. Based on the above explanation, we can resolve the apparent dispute in the Midrash on the verse, quote, "choose men for us." We just read that. Rabbi Yehoshua explains this to the meaning mighty men, while Rabbi Eliezer explains it to mean of high righteousness. In reality, both views are correct, because Moshe in his concealed spiritual battle needed righteous men to help him, while Joshua in his revealed battle needed men who were physically strong. I find it interesting that it's also demonstrated with Moshe, Aaron, and Hur, because they had to support his arms. So that was a physical and spiritual thing going together. Verse 14 through 16. And I'm getting ready to wrap it up here. And Hashem said to Moshe, write these remembrances in the scroll and place into the ears of Joshua, and I will totally obliterate the memory of Amalek under the heavens. And Moshe said, because a hand is upon God's throne, Hashem is at war with Amalek in each and every generation. Sooner or later, Amalek will be destroyed. Esau will do tshuva, God willing, in our day. That was Exodus 17:14-16. This is one of the verses that proves of an oral Torah, the concept of an oral Torah. Everything written in the scroll was accompanied by an unwritten explanation. These unwritten explanations were transmitted, as we know, orally from Hashem to Moshe, and then Moshe to Joshua, and from Joshua to the elders, and forth throughout the generations. Thus, we find that in the Midrash that Moshe received the Torah from Sinai and transmitted it to Joshua. Joshua transmitted it to the elders. This system of transmission is referred to here in our verse. Moshe was to write this remembrance in the scroll, and to write down the Torah scroll, to write down in the Torah scroll the commandment to remember the fight against Amalek. And also this concept to place into the ears of Joshua the oral Torah, to give them an oral explanation. I find it quite fascinating that at the end of our lesson today, that we are reminded that the study of Torah, not only the written Torah, but the study of oral Torah that gives us wisdom from the sages on the things that apply to the Noahide is so very important. I know a lot of people that come into the Noahide world and they're wanting to study everything in the book. They're wanting to, they wish they could go to Israel and join a yeshiva. They wish they could be in a kollel somewhere in the United States studying Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, et cetera, et cetera. But I say to them, look, we have 7 categories of laws that are so rooted in all of, in many of the 613 commandments. We have enough to study as it is. And if we would apply our study to the oral and written laws that apply to those things, we have enough to study for the rest of our life. And so with encouragement from this text, as we recognize that we often find ourselves in Rephidim, a place, we come out of Mitzrayim, which is a narrowing place. We could not exercise that spiritual liberty and religious freedom. And then we get into this place of deliverance and redemption, and we find ourselves in doubtful places. When you find yourself in a doubtful place, or if you find yourself being attacked for some reason, or made uncomfortable, feeling like you're being punished, don't think that the enemy is the sole reason. You might be the reason why you're in this situation. And of course, the answer is turning to Hashem in prayer, and also in your actions and deeds to defeat the spirit or the enemy of Amalek in our own life. So may the name of Amalek be completely obliterated from the world one day. So this opens up the class to discussion. Who would like to be the first one? Miss Mary.